Hello everybody, this is Juddy and Jerod, J&J True Outdoor Adventures, and you're at another Memories of the Hunts Past. And of course you've seen the diary before, the journal, whatever I call it. And we're going to start with the year 2000, which was really Jerod's real first adventures in hunting rifle season.
Well, not really.
It was your first year you killed a buck.
My first actual rifle hunt, though, was basically in the same area. It was just a few years prior to this, if you remember. Probably around 98, 99. Probably 98. And
Yeah,
I think that year I was hunting with a 30-30 lever action.
Yeah, 98, 99, there was no bucks harvested.
No,
that might have been your first year.
They were, because you had quit going to camp.
Yeah.
And you would give me that 30-30. It wasn't the one with the octagon barrel. You'd already gotten rid of it, but you had gotten another 30-30 that I was going to use. I don't think I ever hunted with just a 410 and slugs. I think you took me straight to a high-powered rifle.
I learned my lesson after Brandon not to start you out with a 410.
Right, so I started out with a 30-30, and we had went to our old hunting club, and that's where a lot of these memories are from. And
Meadow River Wildlife
Club. And that year, I think it was 98, we had went in, we were sitting in a holler close to the spot that I eventually would call my own. And
was that the year it snowed and you was on that ridge?
No. Me and you were hunting together. I still wasn't to the point where you would let me hunt by myself.
Right.
And me and you were hunting together. We were probably about 10 yards apart or so, 20 yards apart. And across the holler, some deer started moving in.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And he scoped them. There was about 4, 5, 6 of them, something like that. There was quite a few of them.
Yeah, they was on that next hillside.
He had scoped them, and he said, they're all does. Well, me being as anxious as I was, I thought, well, he's missed something. I'm going to look anyway. So I looked at all of them, and they were all does. And I hunted those 2 weeks. You know, the first week I was still in school. The second week I got to hunt whenever we could, and didn't harvest anything, didn't see any bucks. Same thing went for 1999. I even think I got into bow hunting around that same time. Didn't capitalize on anything. And we went rifle hunting that year. And I think that year was the first year that you traded up, because I only hunted with that 30-30 once. He went to Angler's Roost, which was in Summersville, West Virginia. And he had bought me a 742?
Nope, I bought you the 760 pump BDL.
It was the 760 BDL. It was just like the rifle he used in 30-06, but his was the semi-automatic, mine was the pump. But they were matching. So I had the 740 or the 760 in 99, and we hunted, and that was on the Meadow River Wildlife Club. We didn't go to camp yet.
I think back then it was also called Dotson Ridge Hunting Club, because that's what I've got here.
Well, it may have been. I know we hunted on Dotson Ridge, but I think all the signs said Meadow River Wildlife Club.
Right.
And didn't get a deer that year. Bow hunting, I didn't get a deer. I had a close encounter that year. That year was the first year I tried my hand at baiting. This was 99.
That's whenever you used the salt pellets in a sock and wetted it.
I took salt pellets in a sock and hung it from a tree. And I had some type of mineral or something that was in an orange canister.
Yeah, I can't remember what that was.
That was supposed to make them dig the ground up and this, that, and the other. And we poured that out, and I had some activity with it, but not a lot. There was doe tracks in it.
We didn't use cameras, so we didn't know what was coming in.
There were no cameras used. Well, back then, you know, trail cameras weren't a thing.
Right.
And
where they were, but they were really expensive and we couldn't afford
They
them.
were really expensive, and honestly, at that point, we were still low-key hunting. We just
Yeah.
went and hunted.
Yeah.
And I remember that bow season. I can't remember the month or the day or anything like that, but I do remember I was hunting close to where my salt lick was. We didn't hunt out of tree stands.
Nope.
It was too long of a walk to carry a tree stand. You couldn't use four-wheelers.
Well, we didn't even have four-wheelers.
Yeah, but you couldn't. That
Right,
club
you
wouldn't let
couldn't,
you.
yeah.
And you couldn't drive out this road. And we were probably a mile and a half out that road.
Yeah, it was an old gas well road.
And it went down some steep hills and up some even steeper hills. And beautiful place to hunt. I really missed that place. And there was one section in that whole road where anytime you went through there, no matter the time of the year, there were deer tracks everywhere. And we used to say that's where the deer danced in the road at nighttime. Mm-hmm. And because the road was always covered, but you never seen the deer there, so it had to have been at nighttime. So we hunted out a little bit farther past that, and I was hunting in the holler where I had my sock hung that had salt pellets in it. And I was sitting on the ground, and I'm pretty sure it had rained, and this buck had come up beside me. He was probably 30 yards from me. Now at that time frame in 99, I was what, 12, 13, 14?
99, yeah, he's probably about 14.
14. The main distance we ever practiced with bows was about 20 yards.
20 yards, that's all we had at home to shoot.
That's all we practiced. And this deer was probably about 30 yards from me. Could have been about 25. And he had a snow white rack. The horns on his head had been polished from him rubbing and fighting or doing whatever. His rack was snow white. I'm pretty sure he was a 6-point. He had no clue I was in the world, and he was walking up to the right of me. And I got my bow, which was laying on my lap, and I twisted, because he was to my right, I twisted up onto my knees, and I pulled back on him. And when I pulled back on him, he looked at me. And when he looked at me, I released the trigger. Of course, back then, I think I was using an old bear archery bow. That was a youth bow.
Yeah.
It was a youth bow package. It didn't cost a whole lot. It came with everything you needed. We were using the old Easton XXL
Aluminum arrows.
2060s or 4060s, whatever. They were real heavy shafted aluminum
2016s,
arrows.
I think is what they were.
Was it 2016s?
I think they were 2016s.
And we were using 125 grain wasps.
Yep, 3-bladed wasps.
And so when you shot this bow, even at 20 yards, you could watch your arrow arc and fall into the target. And whenever I shot at him, I remember thinking, this deer's mine. And I already had him hanging on the wall. And just word of advice, don't buy your tractor before you buy your farm.
Yeah.
Because I already had him hanging on the wall in the freezer, and I released that trigger, and I watched that arrow hit some underbrush, like you see that's around us. I watched that arrow because I was so tuned into him. Now, granted, it wasn't as thick as this, but there was some briars and stuff coming up. I watched that arrow hit some briars and go right over top of his back, and him hunker down, and I seen it go across his back. And he ran to the top of the hill, and he was gone. I'm pretty sure that was probably 99.
Yeah,
when that happened. And I rifle hunted that year. I didn't get anything, but I was super excited to have that 760. I felt like I was part of the hunting party then because my gun matched everybody else's.
Well, I was going to say, I just know I have pictures, which I'll include in this video, of you with that gun, and you're in your camo blaze orange sitting on the ridge.
Right. That was actually from the year that the first buck we're going to talk about actually happened, if I'm not mistaken. Now, that it could be the hunting season of '99, because in '99 is when we had that freak snowstorm come through.
Right, because Big Al's in some pictures. You're in there sitting on that ridge.
That snowstorm came through, and it was so bad that, you know, from us to the camera right now is probably 3-4 yards. During that snowstorm, you couldn't even see that camera. If you were videoing during that snowstorm, you wouldn't be able to see us right now. And my glasses got covered in snow, and they were fogging up, and I thought we were going to leave. I was young. I didn't know you sat through that stuff. So I ended up walking very slowly and finding my way to you, and you cleaned my glasses for me. Me and you talked just for a little bit, and then I went back to my spot because the snow squall had kind of passed.
Yeah.
But the snowstorm during that squall had dropped probably about 6 inches of snow.
I just remember that year, even though you wasn't legally, you didn't have a license.
Yeah, I didn't have a license yet. I was 14.
I still sat close, but I didn't sit right with you. I sat within talking distance of you or whatever.
No, not during the year of the snowstorm. The year of the snowstorm, I was sitting in my spot that I had picked. And you were probably about 50 yards down the ridge hunting that holler.
Yeah.
You had already gotten enough confidence in me that you didn't have to sit right next to me.
Right.
And though it might not have been the right thing to do,
we were still close enough if you needed assistance.
all I had to do was holler.
Right.
And he was right there. Big Al was just down in front of me over the hill in the holler. Actually, no. Alvin was hunting. Big Al was hunting to my right down over in Denny's holler.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alvin was down there. So he wasn't far from me either. So if I needed help, I had both of them close to me. And I didn't see anything that year. Then came the year of 2000. Don't remember much about the bow season of 2000.
No, and I didn't write much. You know, the diary was mainly buck hunting. It wasn't really into bow hunting.
But I know during the 2000 season, even the 99 season, I was to the point where I was telling these guys, and they kept reassuring me, it's never going to happen. I'm never going to kill a deer. I'm not even getting an opportunity. And the one time I got an opportunity, you know, I blew it. It's never going to happen. One of the key things that I'll tell anybody that's hunting with youth is you need to reassure them. Don't be filling their heads with, you know, it's got to be this or it's got to be that. You let them go too long without actually making a harvest, and they're going to think it's never going to happen, and they're going to quit.
Well, I was going to say, look at your Uncle Sonny. All the years, now he rifle hunted, he never bow hunted, but all the years he went with your pawpaw up to camp, and they hunted that mountain, and they hunted that mountain, they hunted up towards the lake. It was, I can't remember what year it was that he killed that spike, but he was already in his 30s before he killed his first buck.
And he had probably been hunting since he was 15, 16.
Yes, yeah.
But
I mean, it will happen.
One of the worst things that happens nowadays is everybody wants to push rack size. They want to push this. Let the youth be happy with what they kill. It doesn't matter if it's a spike. The first deer I'm going to show y'all is a spike. And out of all the deer that I've killed, no, granted, none of them's been these extravagant 160-inch deer. That spike means more to me than a 160-inch deer would mean to me now. Because that spike was my first buck that I killed on my own. And after going for 2 years, possibly 3, and not having it happen, I was to the point where I was like, this is never going to happen for me. During those 3 years, I think I watched Alvin maybe kill some deer. Maybe you killed a deer. I can't remember, but you know, these guys would go off to deer camp whenever I was little, and they'd come home and there'd be a buck or two or whatever, and man, I was excited to go. And
no, you were itching to go.
And the only thing I wanted to do when they got back was hear the stories. I wanted to hear about it. I wanted to visualize myself in that situation. It'd have been great if we had had cameras back then where we could have videoed, but you know, back then a video camera was like this big, and
it was a VHS.
You couldn't afford them.
The batteries weighed more than your rifle did.
If it did video, you were only going to get an hour out of it, and the battery would have been dead. But 2000 came along, and we were still hunting the old hunting club. We weren't going to camp yet. We hadn't made the decision to go to camp yet. For quite a few years there, from about 95, 96, they weren't seeing deer up there anymore. In 95, Big Al killed a 9-point and Dad killed a spike. But they were struggling to see deer there.
We stopped hunting up there, according to this. The last buck I harvested from up there, which I brought to rack, I mentioned it in the last Memories of the Hunts Past, was a 6-point that my brother-in-law had shot one day. Thought he missed it. Yeah, the day before I killed it. He thought he missed it. Then the next day, I went up there on our ridge where we hunt, and I had the 6-point come up. You heard me tell the story in the last Memories of Hunting. He come up to my left on the ridge. He was 30 yards or less from me. Didn't even know I was there. I shot him and dropped him right there in his tracks. Here's his rack. Now, like I said, my brother-in-law Denny had shot this one, but not fatally. He'd shot it through the neck. And the next day, that deer would have lived. I mean, it wasn't a mortality or whatever you want to call it shot.
It wasn't a mortal wound.
Right. And I was hunting behind where Denny was hunting, and this buck come up, and then I shot him. And I shot him with my 30-06 on November the 26th, 1997. That's the last year hunting up there. But it had gotten bad where we wasn't seeing deer.
There wasn't any sign. They weren't finding deer poop. They weren't finding rubs. They weren't finding scrapes. The trails had disappeared.
We wasn't even seeing a lot of mass up there. And it was bad years for mass.
At that time, there was you, there was Denny, there was Dink, there was Big Al, there was Pawpaw, there was Sonny. There was 6 guys hunting all over this mountain, and they would go almost the entire week and not see a deer. Between 6 guys and not at least seeing a doe, that's a bad sign. So at that time frame, Dad also wanted to get me involved in hunting.
And we were seeing a lot of deer on that hunting club.
There was a lot of deer on the hunting club, a lot of sign. And my grandpa had a rule. His rule was nobody went to deer camp until they were 15, right?
Yeah, it was really 13, but because we didn't see deer, that's the reason why when you was 13, 14, we hunted on the other club, because we wasn't seeing the deer sign up there, and I said, I don't want to take you and let you get discouraged because you at least didn't see a doe.
Right.
We knew from bow hunting on the hunting club over that we were seeing deer left and right.
Right.
So those years, when you were 13, 14 years old, we hunted over there.
Right.
And whenever you was 15 years old, and that's where we're getting to now, 2000.
And in 2000, Big Al came to stay at the house.
Yeah.
For the week of rifle season. And he slept on the couch. And we treated it just like we was at deer camp, other than we was at home. We got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. We had sausage gravy and biscuits and eggs and
the usual.
We had the usual. And we would eat breakfast. We would head to the hunting club. We had a long walk ahead of us, so we always left early. We'd walk out and we'd sit. I would have to look back, and I can do that. Maybe this isn't edited in the video. To the year 2000.
Well, these are memories of the hunts past. We don't even do edits.
Well, that's fine. I mean, we're not no TV brand, but let's go back to the year 2000. And on the year 2000, when we were rifle hunting, that Monday we went in, opening day. I can't remember if we seen any deer that day or not. I know I didn't see anything to kill. That might have been the year that you seen that big one. Or was that the year prior?
That I don't know.
Just before the snow squall hit. That was in 99. Just before the snow squall hit, you had that big buck come running that day.
He was over 100 yards out, and I could see his rack. That's how big he was.
And he was full-fledged running, and he shot at him and missed.
Yeah, he run down in the hollow, and he was going through mountain laurel.
And he come across in front of you.
Yeah, he come across in front of me. I picked an open spot, and as soon as she went through, he come through, I shot.
Yeah.
And I went down there tracking, never found any hair, no blood.
And then the snow squall hit.
Then the snow squall.
So in 2000, nothing was seen that Monday morning. And then came along Tuesday morning. And I don't know what your notes have. What are your notes have?
All I've got here is November the 23rd, 2000.
That was Tuesday.
Jerod killed his first buck, a spike, on Dotson Ridge Hunting Club, Fayette County, West Virginia. Jerod was 15 years old.
So on Tuesday, we got into the woods well before daylight. I had my favorite spot picked out that I always sat in. Dad hunted down in front of me, probably about 50 yards, 75 yards, and he dropped over the mountain and was hunting a big bowl holler. And Big Al had went down past me probably about 25 to 30 yards and had dropped over into a thick laurel thicket on the right. It was nothing but mountain laurel and rhododendron style laurel. And my other uncle, Dennis Kowalski, he used to bow hunt with us every year. He used to bow hunt that holler. And there were always deer in that holler, but it was so thick you couldn't ever see them.
If you didn't have a tree stand, you was hurt.
If you did rifle hunt in there, you had to pick a hole through that stuff. So if you did see them, you had to pick a hole. And so he was down in front of me over the mountain to the right. And I'm going to guess it was probably around 9 o'clock. It was between 9 and 10 that behind me, because like I said, we hunted off the ground, it was dry, the leaves were super crunchy. I believe that was one of the years where the DNR was actually considering shutting rifle season down because of the drought.
They was afraid of a forest fire.
And
from the ammo being shot.
Well, ammo being shot and people smoking cigarettes,
right,
whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there and I heard the crunching. And if you guys hunt, you know that sound when you hear something walking. And my heart started beating out of my chest because I could pinpoint where it was coming from. I'm sitting there like this. It was coming from behind me to my left. So I get my gun off my lap and I turn around and I'm on both knees. And I'm watching to see where this is coming from. And I see a deer come up over the hill. Well, when I did, I pulled my gun up, finger off the trigger, safety was still on. And I look, and it's a doe. And at that point, yeah, my heart's still beating out of my chest, but I felt just crushed.
Yeah.
I was like, daggone it, all I ever see is does. I don't see anything that I can shoot. Well, I dropped the gun, and when I dropped the gun, I see about 3 other deer coming up behind this doe, and I thought, oh man. So I bring the gun back up, and I see another doe. And I was like, crap. And I go to the deer behind it. It's another doe. And I was like, crap. Well, I go back a little bit farther, and I said, well, shoot, that ain't nothing. And I went, wait a minute. And I went back to its head, and I seen these spikes right there. The way he was walking.
Hold that there. Hold on, Matt.
Get this dust off of it. It's been hanging for quite a few years. The way it was walking, this right here is exactly what I seen. I seen this right here. And I seen the tip of this one sticking up just a little bit farther. And one of the things that they had beaten into my head since I had started rifle hunting was it had to be 3 inches. It had to be. And I seen these sticking up, which were almost as tall as its ears. And I know they're longer than a rifle shell. You know, a rifle shell is about there.
Yeah, he was definitely 3 inch.
And when I seen that, my heart went to beating out of my chest again, and I got the shakes like I had hypothermia. And they walked across the ridge behind me, and there was an old trail that went out through there, like an old logging road. The first 3 does had hit that logging road, and one had turned and was looking at me, and he stopped in an opening. And when he stopped, I pulled right behind his shoulder, and I shot. When I shot, I did what everybody said that I was going to do that I said I wouldn't. I immediately after shooting dropped my gun to look. And when I looked, I seen them all scattering towards that laurel thicket. Well, back then we didn't use radios, and we hollered at one another. And even if people of your hunting party weren't there, you hollered at them. That way, if anybody was going to try to come and take your deer from you, because this used to be a thing, we actually have a story about that. They heard you holler at 5, 6 people, they're not even going to bother. So when I shot that deer and it run off, I immediately hollered, "Dad, Alvin, Dink, Sonny, Papa, Diddy, I just shot one!" And it wasn't just a few seconds that I heard the most god-awful sound I've ever heard in my life.
I was wondering if that was the year.
And, well, there's 2 instances, but I heard the most god-awful sound I'd heard in my life. And it was Big Al coming up out of that laurel thicket.
Mm.
And by that point, I had moved up to where I had shot this deer, and I had just found blood because I couldn't find blood where I shot him. I had just found blood. And Big Al was rumbling, stumbling. He didn't care if he fell. He was getting to me. And like I said, he was close. He was 25 yards over the hill to me, 30 yards over the hill from where I was sitting. By the time he made it to me, he's telling me congratulations, and all we have is a blood trail. I'm heartbroken because there's no deer laying there. And I was like, oh God, we're not going to find it. We hear another awful noise coming up the daggone woods.
Coming down the ridge.
Coming up the ridge.
Well, up the ridge, yeah.
And it was this man at a full sprint, running as hard as he could run to get to me. And he made it to me faster than probably you'd ever made it anywhere. And he started hugging me, and he goes, all right, now let's just calm down. Let's calm down. Here's the blood. We'll find it. It's just laying over here. And we started looking. Well, I started following the blood trail. He just went into through the laurel. And he said, he's laying right here. And I said, well, I'm going to follow the blood. So I followed the blood trail on around.
Yeah.
And he's standing there at my deer. And, of course, the blood trail led right to it. And he goes, you get down there and grab his horns. He goes, nobody, and this is a rule of ours, nobody is to touch the rack, no matter how small or big, until the person who kills it. The person who kills it grabs that rack. The person who kills it sees that deer, or gets to touch that deer first. So I got down there next to it, and I grabbed its rack, and I thanked God for it and everything, and I was ecstatic, and everybody was tickled to death. Hunting season was basically done at that point. Everybody was so tickled that I got one. And
well, you was the only one that year that got one.
yeah, and we've got some pictures
Yeah, I'll have them in here.
of me with this deer.
I think I got pictures of you with that deer.
You do. They're in the trunk of the car, and I'm wearing my orange pants.
Yes.
And a West Virginia sweatshirt.
Yeah, that's when we had the Cavalier.
And we've got him in the trunk, and I'm holding his head up at the house. And we've got some pictures of that, and I was ecstatic. I couldn't wait to get back to school and tell the boys that always talked about killing deer that I had gotten one, and I had some friends that lived across the road, and you know they always had killed deer. Some of them had killed deer whenever they were 8 years old, and I was so excited to tell them that I had finally gotten one, and I remember Dad looking at me and saying, "All right now, got it." And I looked at him and I said, "Well, I don't know how to get it." And he goes, "I'll do this one. You get this one for free. But you're going to pay attention. And from here on out, the rest of them's yours."
Yeah, because here's the thing. The first buck I killed back in 80...
But time out. The first thing he did, which I still find comical to this day, he got ready to gut it, and he grabbed his chew of Copenhagen and threw it on the ground. He goes, "I can't do it with that in." And I said, "Well, why can't you gut it with that in?" And Alvin started busting out laughing.
Yeah.
And said, "Well, he went to gut one time that had a busted gut."
That's when I took Brandon, the year I took Brandon, and we got that one, and Denny could hear me on the next ridge, and he was over there just busting and laughing because I was I wasn't puking, but I was coughing and gagging. I was almost close to puking.
He had that chew of Copenhagen in, and he started gutting that deer with that busted gut, and it was just,
yeah. But what I was getting ready to say was back in '83 when I killed my very first buck, that 6-point. When I got to him, I was all, wow, I got me a buck or whatever. First thought somebody killed a buck and left it lay there, but then it realized it was mine. Then he gets down there and everything, and I'm still sitting there looking at it and admiring it and everything because, here's this deer that I'd shot.
Yeah, you finally done it.
Yeah, I finally done it. And, of course, that was only my second year ever hunting in my life.
Right.
And then he says, "Are you going to gut that thing or am I going to have to? And if I gut it, it's mine." And that's the reason why I told you, you get this one for free. I wasn't going to tell you if I gut it, it's mine.
Right.
Because you needed to learn.
Right.
You hadn't looked at Outdoor Life magazines on where they show pictures of how to gut it. And of course now YouTube's got to the point you can't show people gutting deer because that's against YouTube's policies and stuff now. So
which is actually educational.
It's educational for people who have never hunted.
Well, not even just that. I mean, if you look at it from a survival standpoint,
right?
If you actually had to hunt for your family's food and for survival, and you don't know what you're doing to gut one, you could ruin it.
Yeah. Well, that's like I've had people, and I mentioned this in a video of us bow hunting here just a week or two ago, that I've got people at work who are worried about our society now. And they talk about they need to learn to hunt. They need to learn how to skin animals. They need to learn how to gut animals. They're asking me questions.
Right.
You got people like that. And YouTube is starting to ban kill shots. They're starting to ban, the gutting process, the cutting up process of how to cut up deer and all this.
They say it's too graphic for people.
I'm not going to get into that's not what this is about. This is Memories of Hunts Past, but that's wrong. This is educational for anybody, youth, older people, people who've never hunted a day in their life that maybe want to get into it, survivalists.
I was going to say, going into the woods and harvesting an animal of any sort, squirrel, rabbit, a deer, that's easy. It's not, but I mean, that's the easy part.
Processing it.
Processing that is the hard part. Gutting it the proper way to where you're not contaminating the meat. And, getting it cut up into steaks or getting it cut up into chunks to where you can have deer stew or getting it cut up into chunks where you can make burger. That's what people need to know how to do, because there might not always be a butcher around that can butcher
Right.
this for you, or maybe you can't afford a butcher.
And especially if you're a person who has not grown up in the country.
Right.
You know, watched your grandparents or even your parents raise pigs, raise chickens.
I mean, that was one of the advantages I had even long before I killed a deer. People we knew across the road, they always butchered their own deer.
Yeah.
From probably about the age of 10, I was learning how to butcher a deer from skinning it, quartering it, cutting it up,
Deboning it, whatever.
deboning it, whatever, to where you have steaks, you have stew meat, you have burger, you have butterflied steaks.
Well, you know, they ended up, you know, one year when we killed several deer, and we said, man, this is going to cost us a fortune to get it butchered. They let us come over there while they were cutting up deer. We cut up our own deer.
Yeah, and they helped us.
Yeah.
I mean, and so that helped out a lot. But
I'll never forget that, you know, running to you after you've done shot your deer and everything, congratulating you and everything, going and finding it and all that. I mean, I'll never, ever forget that.
I won't either, the way you come running up that ridge.
But-
you and Alvin both, but
Yeah.
I mean, you came at a dead sprint. Alvin came, you know, stumbling and crawling and falling over stuff and breaking stuff out of the way. And that was, I mean, it's a special moment. And for a youth to see people have that excitement for you, that makes it even that much stronger in you to continue to do this.
Right.
And
And
the
that-
love for it. And the thing is, yeah, it was a spike. There wasn't a single person back then, in 2000,
That would give you a thumbs down.
that
for,
whenever we went to the gas station to check it in, because that's how you did it then, people would walk in and say, "Did you get one?" "Yeah, I got a spike." "Well, let's look at it."
yeah,
And man, they made you feel like you just killed a 200-inch deer,
right.
because they went out to the truck and they told you how good of a deer it was, and man, that's nice. And
Well, that's the reason
and
why
you got attention from it. Nowadays, you kill that spike and somebody sees it and they want to shame you for it.
right.
And they want to say, you know, well, hell, I'd have let him grow a little bit longer.
Yeah. But, and now here's the thing, and that's what's wrong with the hunting community today. Well, not all hunting community. There's still a lot of people who will just congratulate you and are proud that you killed a spike or whatever. But there are a few in a group of people who give it another year. You shouldn't kill spikes. But here's the thing. God put these animals on this earth for us to harvest. The DNR regulate them. 3 inches or longer, or whatever, bigger. So as long as the DNR says it's legal, then that's what we'll shoot.
Well, that's like on a side note, and then we'll get back to the memories of the hunt. One of the greatest things that I had as a youth was my very first deer was a buck.
Yep.
Would I have been as excited over a doe? Probably. I don't know. But that buck held a special place in my heart, and that buck was something I could hang on the wall on this plaque that I hold a memory for the rest of my life.
Right, and that's going to say, other spikes we've killed years later, we've not hung on the wall.
Right. Some of these other spikes, they don't hold the same meaning.
Right. But it was meat for our family.
And that's kind of where we're at now, is even during bow season, mainly bow season, we don't harvest very many spikes right now with a bow unless we need the meat. This year, granted, I haven't seen any deer. You haven't really seen any deer.
We'll shoot a doe.
I don't need the meat bad enough to where I'm going to shoot a spike.
Or shoot a doe. I mean, we've let them walk.
Right. I'll let a doe walk right now.
Yep.
If my freezer was empty, I'm going to shoot that spike, I'm going to shoot that doe, and I'm going to be just as tickled with them as I am if I had killed a big old buck.
Yep.
But not being greedy and just shooting to kill, I don't need the meat, so I'm going to let them walk, and I'm rack hunting this year.
Yep.
But that spike meant a lot to me, and that's one of the things that I have big concern with these youth hunts in West Virginia, is they only allow them to kill a doe, and I don't believe that is right. You should give those youth every opportunity to make their first kill.
Whether
And
it's a buck or a doe.
it should be a buck or a doe, whatever they choose to shoot and whatever walks out in front of them. To stamp a youth's love of this sport, a lot of it comes from that first kill.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are in the woods, if I take my daughter in the woods, which I will be next year, and if I take my daughter in the woods and I have to tell her no because a 6-point walks past her and it's youth hunt.
Or it's a spike.
Right,
matter.
or a spike, but I'm just saying.
A buck walks in and you say, oh, you can't shoot
If that buck walks by, and that's all we've seen, and I have to tell her no, that's going to deter her from wanting to do it.
Right. But now, go ahead.
When you take the youth out, the youth should be able to shoot whatever walks out in front of them. They should have an either sex policy for those animals, for the youth.
Okay, you know, we've covered the 2000. Now, I don't have much notes for 2001, 2002. I just will say, and again, we shoot to provide meat, to provide food for our family. 2001, I killed a spike. I don't think you got anything, unless, you know, during bow season you may have.
2001 is whenever you killed the spike that Big Al let walk past him.
Right, right.
And
Big Al thought it was a doe.
this spike had walked past him, and he thought it was a doe, and he had scoped its head multiple times. And the deer walked past him, topped the top of the ridge, started down in the holler where Dad was hunting, and he heard Dad, pow! And he goes, ah, bull, there ain't no way. There ain't no way I just let a buck walk past me. And he gets up to the top of the hill, and sure enough, the one that walked past him was a spike. And Dad had him on the ground, and he congratulated him. He was happy, but he was mad at the same time. He said, I don't know how that thing got past me.
And Big Al would have been here to share this memories of the hunt, but he had a prior engagement to be at, so we called him, but he couldn't make it. Then in 2002, I killed another spike. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then we get into 2003.
That was the one. That one has a funny story too. It's a little bit graphic, so we'll edit it down just a little bit. But that's the spike that came through, and you shot him.
Is that the one that went over the hill and I shot him again? And
you ended up neutering him.
Right. I didn't. I was real easy to gut that deer.
Yeah, that deer had been neutered.
I forgot about that.
By 30-06. And he hollered at us. We got down there, and he goes, "I'm not going to have anything to cut off to make my hole."
There's a hole there already.
He said, "There's already a hole."
I forgot about that. Yeah. I didn't forget it, but I couldn't remember if it was that year.
It was that year that, because you had shot him, and you had made a good shot on him.
And he run off.
And he started running down the hill.
In that laurel.
And he took another shot, and when he shot again, he lost him. He didn't know where he went. And he started down over the hill. I went to him and started down over the hill. And he didn't need to take the second shot. That deer would have died anyway. But
yeah, that
second shot, it definitely put him on the ground because his manhood was gone.
Was that the year after they had done that clear cut?
2002, maybe.
I can't remember.
Maybe, because it was around 2002, 2003 that they did the clear cut.
Yeah. And I forgot to bring the antlers. And you did too.
Of what?
The 2003.
No, I got 2003 right here.
That's the year we both killed 4 points.
Yeah, you didn't bring yours.
I didn't bring mine. Okay. Yeah, in 2003, this was our first year going back to camp.
Yes.
Okay, folks, we're back. We took a little break. We made some coffee on the back of the truck, almost like camp coffee.
Did a Facebook Live.
Did a Facebook Live.
Those of you that tuned in and commented, we appreciate you.
Yep. But I've got my notes here. This was a rough year for 2003 for me. Jerod, no, it was pretty good for him. And me too, but this was the year I started having chest pains.
Yeah.
And we went to camp in the first 3 days, I think.
We hunted on the mountain Monday and Tuesday.
Okay, first 2 days.
And on Wednesday, and if you remember, Alvin's son...
AJ was with us.
No.
Was he?
Cage was with us.
Cage, okay. Yes, yes.
That was Cage's first year at deer camp.
Yeah. Cage went with us that year, yeah.
And we stayed in Alvin's camper.
Yeah, it wasn't mine yet.
And Cage wanted to go to deer camp, and we went. And we hunted on the mountain Monday and Tuesday.
Right.
And your chest pain started bothering you. We weren't seeing anything on the mountain, so we went up towards the lake.
Right. We went up the lake.
And we started hunting up there.
And, of course, I've got it here, Sherwood Lake, but I think you've got it on your plaque as Dilly's Trail.
It was around Dilly's Trail, yes.
Yeah. And that year, I'm trying to look here, Jerod scored on a 4-point on November the 26th. And the next day, the 27th, I scored on a 4-point, roughly in the same spot.
It was almost the same spot, almost the same time.
Yeah.
We hadn't been seeing anything on the mountain. And we went back to camp. He had been complaining of some chest pains. I was worried, you know, and we decided to go up towards the lake and try it, which I normally don't like to do because up towards the lake is primarily pines.
Right, and the terrain's a lot gentler than the mountain where we hunt.
Well, and that's not a big deal. It's the pines. I don't like hunting in pines.
No, but what I'm saying is for me, because I was having those chest pains,
right.
We decided, well, let's go up towards the lake. That way I don't have to climb that mountain.
So it had snowed.
Yeah.
We had probably about 4 or 5 inches of snow on the ground. And we went to, it's not exactly Dilly's Trail, but it's close to Dilly's Trail.
Right.
And there used to be some old fields out there that the DNR used to plant, I guess, food plots in.
There's food plots that the DNR planted back then.
And now it's
the Park Service.
And now it's just grass is growing or whatever. And we thought we'd go up there, so we all woke up, we went, and we got there, and I found a spot. It looked really good to me, and I was like, man, I'm going to sit right here. I'm going to watch this little field. The woods on the opposite side of the field was an old cut of some sort.
Yeah.
And it was real close together, and it was thick, and I was like, I'm going to sit right here. Alvin and Cage had sat behind us, probably about 200 yards, 300 yards from where me and you went.
Right, because I separated from you and went further out into the woods.
Right, so they had decided to sit there because it overlooked a huge swamp. And they were going to sit and watch that swamp, and I went down a little bit farther and found a spot I liked, and Dad said, well, I'm going to go ahead and go behind you. And he goes, this road will take me around and take me out of your shooting lane, and I'll find something out there. And I said, okay. So I go to my spot, and I sit down, I rake out my spot, and sit down. And I could still see Dad walking the roadway behind me.
I never got to my spot I was going to.
And he got out of my sight, and I sat down and I took my gloves off. And I got my can of snuff out, and I got me a chew, and I started putting my gloves back on. At that point, I looked up, my gun's laying across my lap. I'm just sitting on the ground, and I seen a deer on the opposite side of the field, probably 100 yards across. I seen a deer walking through that thick stuff. Well, I grabbed my gun and I pulled it up, and when I pulled it up, I seen his rack. I seen his rack walking through like this. And all I could see was this main beam coming up, which to this point was the largest beam I had seen on a deer through my scope. And I went to pull for his shoulder, and the woods were so close together and the thicket was so close together I couldn't get a shot. So I pulled for his neck, and I was going to shoot him in the neck. And about the time that I took the slack out of the trigger, This deer decided to go, huh? And look at me. I shot. The deer hit the ground. I didn't know it at the time. I think we were using radios then.
We may have started using
And
radios.
I think I grabbed my little 2A radio and I said, Dad, Alvin, I just killed one. And Dad says, I'm heading to you. Well, I go across the field and I can't find it. He just disappeared. And as I got closer to where he was standing, I seen him and it looked like he just bedded down. And I thought, well, man, I dropped him in his tracks. It had turned out that about the time I pulled the trigger, whenever he turned his head, I actually hit him in the snout. And it went out the back of his head.
Yeah, yeah.
And he hit the ground. And I was amazed that that 30-06 with 180 grain core lock soft points.
Right, that's what we was doing at that time.
Didn't blow his horns off of his head.
I hadn't got into reloading.
And it had went through his snout out the back of his head, dropped him. I was tickled to death. Alvin and Cage didn't come down to me. Dad came to me. He congratulated me. I gutted this one.
That was my boy. He got one.
And he had told me I didn't even make it to my spot yet. And you shot. I hadn't made it 5 minutes past you. And I shot him, gutted him, drug him out. Alvin and Cage both looked at him. Cage was amazed. He said, oh man, you know, you got one. And I said,
well,
yeah.
that was really Cage's first year ever experienced hunting.
Yeah, Cage had never been hunting or anything like that in his whole life. He was still fairly young during that hunt. He was probably 10, 8, something like that.
I don't know. I thought he was, well,
12?
I thought he might have been 13.
He may have been 13. But that was his first experience ever actually hunting. And he was real excited after I killed this one. And I took him back to, did we have the car then, or we have the truck?
Had the S10.
We had the S10
The old
truck.
94 S10.
I took him back to it, and
At least I think that's what we had.
I can't remember if you took me back to camp or if I sat there the rest of the day.
That I don't remember.
But I know that S10 wasn't insulated and it was cold.
Yeah. And then the next day, I go in the same spot. Pretty much the same spot.
You were just a little bit farther past me.
Right. And I had a 4-point. I forgot. I'm sorry. I apologize. I forgot to bring the rack. I'll do a little snap picture shot of it. I'll take a picture of it when I get home.
You'll see it now.
Nah. But
and there's his 4-point.
Yeah, there's my 4-point. But I went in there and I hadn't been in there in no time. And ended up shooting that 4-point. And it was the S10 because I remember when we brought them home and went down to Mama and Pawpaw's, and Pawpaw and Sonny come out and everything.
Because they went up the second week.
Yeah, but they seen, because when we come home, they hadn't left yet.
Right.
And they seen that bullet hole through the nose, or through the snout.
Yep.
And everything, and his jaw's hanging down a little bit. But, you know, that was a good year, 2004, because...
No, that was 2003.
Or 2003. Okay, yeah, now I'm going to go 2000.
No, because there's more that happened in 2003.
What happened in 2003? I don't have it wrote down.
So in 2003, we killed the 4-points. And Sonny and Dank and Pawpaw.
Oh, yeah.
They went to hunt the second week. Now, granted, we'll have to put the snapshot of that picture in here, too.
Dank with his 8-point.
Dank with his 8-point. But they go up the second week. And they hunted, and we went to the old hunting club for the last time. This was the last time that we hunted that hunting club.
Yeah,
And
you killed the 6-point.
We had doe stamps, and we had hunted all day. It was the last day. It was November it was December the 6th. It was the last day of the West Virginia rifle season. And we didn't know it, but doe season was running concurrent with rifle season. for bucks. So me and Dad could have killed does. Well, on our way out, we were leaving. We were done. We had 2 does come from our right and walk up right beside us and cross the trail we were walking 15 yards from us and walk over into the woods.
We just let them go.
And we let them walk because we didn't know that you could kill a doe if you had your doe stamp. So we let them walk. We walked another 20 yards out of the woods into where they had clear cut. They had clear cut the ridge where I normally hunted. And we had walked out of the woods into the clear cut. And this guy walked out. And he walked out to our left. And I threw my gun up. And I seen he had horns. And I seen that they were longer than 3 inches. That's all I seen. And I shot him. And he ran down in the holler. We went down and got him. And come to find out, he was actually a 5-point with his G2 broken off. This is probably the smallest 5-point you'll see that has a symmetrical rack. If he hadn't broke that off, he'd be perfectly symmetrical. And I killed him the last day. That was the first time that anybody in our hunting party had killed 2 bucks during rifle season, that had filled their extra buck tag. I did it that year by killing this one and killing the 4-point. But I was tickled to death with both of these bucks because they had racks. They weren't just a 1-horn spike or a 2-horn spike.
Right. And then, of course, you know, like I said, I killed the 4-point, and that was the only thing I got the rest of that year. Then, this is going to be the last one, 2004. That spring, all these chest pains I'd had in 2003 and everything, and I went to the doctor because I'm diabetic. I had to go every 2 months. I told him about it. I had to have a stress test done. It was done in March of 2004. And within a week, I got a phone call to show up at the hospital to have either open heart surgery. Well, that's what they told me, open heart surgery. And they called me at work and told me that. Scared me to death, and I asked them, what's wrong? What's wrong? Well, you got 2 blockages, and they don't know if they can do stents. Well, thank the good Lord above, when I went to the hospital, they were able to do the stents. So then, you know, after all that, and, you know, medicines and stuff, 2004 come along, we decided to go to camp.
And you had been feeling good. All bow season, you were feeling great.
Right.
No chest pains.
No chest pains or nothing. In fact, it was getting to the point I was out walking you.
Yeah.
And so 2004 we go to camp, and we're back up on the mountain. We're back up there where we love to camp. And I had also started in 2004 reloading.
Yes.
And I loaded up my favorite round, which is a 30-06 with a 150 grain Nosler ballistic tip. My father-in-law did not believe in reloads for deer hunting. But
and I wasn't using them yet.
You wasn't using them yet. And I had a model 700 ADL synthetic stock.
Yep.
And we went up on the mountain, and it was raining, if I remember.
Well,
it had been raining.
It was snowing, it was raining, it was spitting ice.
That morning it was raining.
But it was changing, and we
Right.
had spitting ice, we had spitting snow, and it was a cold morning.
But we went out there on my favorite ridge that you see me hunt on, and I decided to go out the ridge and drop to my right to where I could watch these 2 hollows that come together and go down out in front of the ridge. And Jerod went somewhere. I think he went.
I went on down the ridge about midways and broke over to the left, and was sitting at a deadfall where I could see into that thicket.
Right. And I had these old cheap clear plastic ponchos I put on because it was raining. And I had just sat down at a log, and I can remember this vividly. I just sat down on a log at the base of a tree, and I'm sitting there, and I've got that poncho over my legs so I'm not getting wet. And I just looked to my left, and this deer stood up. Undoubtedly, it was bedded there on the hillside.
Yeah.
Didn't know I was there, but it just stood up. I scoped. I seen it was a buck. Again, we're not hunting racks. I just see horns. I didn't look to see how many points, whatever. I seen horns. It was legal. I put that 30-06 across my knee. I shot him. He was basically quartering away from me. I shot him behind the front shoulder. That deer reared up on its hind legs like a horse would, and then just dropped and slid down in that hollow.
Well, actually, I remember this part vividly. He comes across the radio, and he says, I flipped that deer.
Yeah.
He said that deer reared up on its hind legs and it did a flip and landed on its back and down the hill it went.
Yeah, it went down the hill.
It's laying down here. I can see it.
But now here, this is the rack of it, and it's a 5-point. And if you can see, right there is the round that I loaded. This is the actual casing. But I put one of the bullets in it because it was the first year that I used that 150 grain Nosler ballistic tip. It's got a green tip. But this is the 5-point. And I mean, it's a perfect 5-point. It's not wide, whatever, but it's symmetrical. It even has a little hump right here. It could have been a 6-point, but you know, later, next year or whatever. But like I said, back then, we don't hunt for rack. We see a rack, if it's legal, we shoot. It's meat for the freezer. But I killed him, and then I get back, or I get down to him. Jerod comes, and I get him gutted out.
No, you told me not to come to you.
Right, but you did come. I think you came down.
No, I didn't come down. You told me to stay where I was at. Well, and I said, well,
I know you told me you'd help me drag him up the hill. And I said, no, up the holler.
Well, I radioed.
Right.
Because you told me to stay put, that they're just starting to move.
Yeah.
And I stayed there. And I come across the radio and I said, well, when you get him gutted, I'll help you drag him up out of the holler.
Right.
And he goes, well, we'll see. And you gutted the deer, you come back across radio and you said, I'm not messing up your hunting. You stay where you're at. I'm going to drag him down the holler, and right. I'm going to take him down to the bridge.
And the reason why I told him I was dragging him down the holler to the bridge, to the main blacktop road, was because I tried to drag him up the holler and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, up there in those mountains, those deer are big. Even if we don't have big racks, them deer are big.
And the thing was, it wasn't because of chest pains. It's because of how steep that mountain is.
Yeah, it's how steep. And so I drug him down the holler. I tripped a couple times, fell. Thank God for synthetic stocks, because I fell on my rifle because I had it across my back.
It saved your back.
It saved my back too, because I
fell on a rock, and if he hadn't had that rifle across his back the way he did, he could have broke his spine. But that rifle stock took the impact of that rock, did not damage the stock at all, and had that been a wood stock, you would have busted it.
I'd have busted that stock.
And that's whenever we finally said, hey, there might be something to these synthetic stocks, because up to that gun, we hated the synthetic stock.
Right, we did. But I ended up getting him drugged down there, and I radioed Jerod. I said, Jerod, I'm down here. Now, you all continue to hunt. I said, don't worry about me. I said, but when you leave the mountain, don't forget, I'm down here.
And by that point, it was snowing.
It had started spitting snow.
And we were wet.
When I radioed Jerod and told him that, he says, well, I'm already in the logging trail. I'm on my way to the truck to come get you. And I said, no, you don't have to. I'm already on my way. So he comes and gets me. He takes me back to camp.
You checked in your deer.
Checked it in. We hung it up.
Took you and you hung it up. We got you situated in camp, and then I went back to the mountain.
You went back. Now tell you the rest of the story.
So during all this, we left, and this is where he needs to be here, but like we said, he had a prior engagement. So we left Big Al on the mountain, and I had radioed and told him, he already knew Dad had gotten one. I radioed and told him, I'm picking up Dad, taking him back to camp. I'm coming back. He said, 10-4, I'll be right here. So I get the truck, take him back, come back to the mountain. And That's the fastest I've ever went up that mountain.
Yeah.
I went up that mountain, what normally takes us about an hour, in about 15 to 20 minutes. I ran up that mountain. And I didn't go back out to where I was hunting. I decided, well, I'm going to go out here closer to Alvin, to Big Al. That way, if I kill one, he's close to me. If he kills one, I'm close to him. So I went out towards him. I knew where he was hunting. And there's a place up there that has an old trash barrel he used to hunt by. And I said, well, I'll go out here and I'll drop over to the left and hunt the holler that's kind of looking back towards the ridge where Dad killed the 5-point. So I get back to my spot. I'm huffing, I'm puffing, I'm sweating. I take my gloves off, I unzip my jacket. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna die. I can't get a breath of air because that year we had cabbage with little smokies in it and everything else.
Yeah.
And that cabbage was messing with me. It'd give me gas, and I didn't know that. All I know was I couldn't take a breath without sharp pains right here. And I thought I was having a heart attack with all the trouble he had had with his chest pains and everything else. And then I can't take a breath without these sharp pains. So I was a little bit scared. And I'm trying to catch my breath. And I know my gloves were laying next to me. My fanny pack was laying next to me. I got my can of snuff out. I freshened up my dip. And I leaned back against the tree because I was tired. And I just made a lot of noise getting in there because it was dry. Or no, it was wet and stuff.
Yeah.
But I had made noise getting in there because it was going through brush like this. And I was like, well, I'm not going to see nothing for a little bit. So I leaned back against the tree. And I'm catching my breath. And I heard pow right from behind me. And I heard, about you, Jerod. And I said, yeah. He goes, I got one. Can you help me? I said, I'll be there in a minute. So I put my gloves in my fanny pack. I put my fanny pack back on. I put my hat back on. Get up. Walk over to where he's at. He's not in his spot. And I look across the ridge. Well, he's across the holler on the other side. Knelt down next to his deer. So I waved at him. He waved at me. And I went over to him, and he'd killed a nice spike. If I'm not mistaken, it was a spike.
I think so.
Before he had killed that spike, he had seen a really big buck come out of the thicket. And he couldn't get a shot at him because of how thick it was. And then that was while we were gone.
Mm-hmm.
Then a couple hours later, you know, that spike come out. He shoots the spike. I go over to him. He guts it, fills out his tag. And he goes, what do you think the best way to get him out of here is? I said, we take him over to the edge of the mountain and go straight down. I said, that'll take us right to the truck.
Yep. It takes about 30, 40 minutes of dragging out of the picture.
Exactly. I mean, you're going to drag for 20 minutes compared to an hour.
Yeah.
So I said, let's just drag him up straight across the top, go down the other side. We'll come right out at the truck. So we drag him up from where he's at. And we drag him over to the edge. And I told Alvin, I said, well, just push him. I said, he'll slide down the mountain.
Yeah, that's how steep it is.
So we gave him a push, and he slid probably about 75 yards. And I said, now we got to slide.
Mm-hmm.
So we slid down the mountain to where the deer was at. Pushed him again. He slid a little bit farther till he hit a tree. And we done that till we got him to the bottom. We got him loaded in the truck. I took Alvin down, Big Al. I took him down. Checked in his deer. By this point, it was 2 o'clock.
Yeah. I remember I asked you, you going back up there?
Yeah. we checked in his deer. I took him to camp. So there's Dad and Big Al with 2 deer hanging. And Dad asked me, he says, so are you going back up the mountain? And I said, no. I've already been up that mountain 3 times.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it again.
And then I don't know what happened the rest
Well, I
of the
guess
week.
it was 2.
I can't remember what day that was. But
What's that?
Well, Alvin killed his.
Well, it's on your plaque, ain't it?
Well, yeah, I know it's on the plaque. It was November the 25th
November the 25th of what year?
of 2004.
So we go back to 2004. November 25th was Thursday.
Okay, so we had Friday and Saturday still to hunt.
Yes.
And I can't remember. I guess I had my extra buck tag. Alvin probably did too. But I just don't remember what happened Friday and Saturday.
Nothing stands out. I don't think we've seen any more deer from there on out.
I don't have any notes of anybody killing another deer or anything like that.
Well, I know I did.
Right.
I didn't kill anything because on that mountain, the very first deer I killed was a 6-point, and it wasn't on the mountain. It was that mountain, but it wasn't on the mountain. We were walking up.
Yeah, but that's video that we've got.
And that was a 6-point, and that was in 2012, 2013.
Somewhere. That video's on our channel. But that's it for the 2000, or for Memories of the Hunts. We've taken you to 2004. And we still have 2005, 6, 7, 8, and then the thing is 2009, 2010, unless I've got it in another, because this book was starting to tear up, and I carried another little book that I carried in my pocket. We may not have nothing for 9 and 10 unless we sit down and start thinking about it, looking at pictures. But
I would say if we look at pictures, we'll probably be able to figure out something for 9 and 10. I know there's a year in there where me and Dad both killed spikes up towards the lake. I know there's a year that Big Al killed a buck and me and Dad didn't kill anything. So we'll have to get with Big Al and see what he remembers. We'll have to look to see if we've got notes anywhere else. And then, like you said, about 2011.
that's when the videos started.
Is when the video started. So we don't have a whole lot more that we can cover that you all can't go see if you just go back to 2011. You've almost seen the full history of us. There's some things we've left out just because the main thing we focus on here is rifle season. So there's some bow hunts, there's some deer we've killed with bows that aren't on this. But we appreciate y'all watching.
Yep.
And for those of you that really like these videos, you know, you're who we make them for. And we hope this one's just as enjoyable as the rest.
And what I do want to say, I did it today. You know, on YouTube, you have playlists. Mm-hmm. All of our hunting videos is on West Virginia Hunting playlist, including Memories of the Hunts Past. But you have to go through all these videos to find it. Today, I created a Memories of the Hunts Past playlist. And now all our videos from Memories of the Hunts Past that we've been doing here lately is in that playlist.
Yeah.
And I think there's about maybe 12 of them up there right now. I can't remember for sure. But with that being said, we're going to close this Memories of the Hunts Past. I appreciate Jerod being here, sharing these memories with us.
Absolutely.
And I wish Big Al was here to share because he was a part of these memories too.
I'll say he'd have more to add.
Yeah, he would have more to add. And just stay tuned to J&J True Outdoor Adventures. Please subscribe. If you're a new viewer, you know, hit that subscribe button, hit the notify bell so you're notified when we upload new content.
And the other thing I'd like to say is make sure you stay tuned for the current Memories of the Hunt that you get to watch almost live with us. They're about a week behind or whatever, but these are the new Memories of the Hunt. The videos we shoot during archery season, during rifle season, those are the new Memories of the Hunt. So if you love the Memories of the Hunt, well, these are the live action stories that you're getting to see rather than us just sitting here telling you about it.
Yeah. And, you know, just like I said, subscribe, hit the thumbs up, leave us comments. Like I mentioned to Big Al the other day, I respond on the videos. I try to respond to all the comments. Now, if you've addressed a comment to Jerod or if you've addressed a comment to Big Al, I want them to comment.
And I may not do it, and I apologize. I am very stressed for time.
Yeah, you work 10, 11, 12-hour days, 5 days a week.
I have very limited time to be able to do anything. Half of our videos I don't even watch myself.
Right.
But if it's a comment and it's something out there that you want to know, and it's something that I can answer that he can't answer or Big Al can't answer,
I'll let him know.
He'll let me know, and I'll try to get to him, but I may miss some, and I apologize for that.
But again, we appreciate all of our viewers. We appreciate the comments that you leave. Just done that Facebook Live, and I couldn't believe, Facebook, everybody watching. We got over 3,000 subscribers, 3,300 subscribers on YouTube, okay? On the J&J Facebook page, I think about 800 people who like it or follow it. And with that Facebook Live, we had up to 19 people watching the Facebook Live.
Yeah.
And I know they watched the channel too.
And we appreciate every one of them that watched it.
Yeah. So for Jerod, Big Al, he's not here, but for Jerod, Big Al.
We'd have to separate a little bit more.
Yeah, we'd have to separate a little more. But we do say we appreciate you, and we'll see you
in the woods.
Thanks for watching.